and welcome to another episode of This Food in History. Today we are looking at a seasonal dish, the bûche de Noël, also known as a Yule log cake that has kind of a Swiss ho-ho roll appearance. And the cake itself appears in about the 19th century, but it hails from a much older tradition. Vikings and the Nordic people celebrated Yule, which had celebrations that lasted from the winter solstice and potentially up until January 12th, or at least for 12 days for sure. The festivities included feasting, drinking, songs, games, and sacrifices to gods and spirits. They had a Yule tree that was decorated with small statues of the gods, some clothes, and food. They also had wreaths that they set on fire and tossed down hills as a wish for the return of the sun. There was a Yule goat that symbolized the goats that pulled Thor through the skies on his chariot and created the sound of thunder. Viking men would sing door to door dressed in goat skins, and they would get rewards for it, such as food and drink. And lastly, there was an old man Winter who was thought to be Odin Allfather. A member would dress up and be invited into the house for feast. Odin would be out this night fighting the spirits that were said to come out during this time because it is the longest and darkest night of the year. Yule logs are burned on the solstice. They must be kind of gotten free of money exchange, either from your own trees or sharing with a neighbor or a friend. They're cut, brought into the house. They have runes carved into them as a wish for protection from the gods. It's to be burned. The wood has to make good sparks. The higher the sparks, the better your protection for the following year would be. Certain types of trees might have different messages that you were kind of wishing for in the new year, and after it's burned all night, whatever was remaining was saved for the following year to relight the fire that next year, and it had to be done by somebody with clean hands. They had to last all night long. Some 17th century French families thought that the log had to be kept under the bed to protect the house of a whole year from fire and thunder, tying this back to the Thor's lightning bolts part of these festivities. Viking invasions kind of spread this tradition then throughout Europe, and the celebrations became intertwined with these Northern European solstice rites, especially those of the Celts, who believed that burning a massive log vanquished the winter darkness. Pagan beliefs of Yule are the 12-day celebration of light with renewal in the returning of the sun. You reflect on the past and you look forward to the future. They had candles, bonfires, lighting of the tree, and more as part of this celebration of light in the sun. Ancient Romans also celebrated a version of solstice called the Saturnalia, which lasts for 1 week, and it has feasting and gift giving to celebrate the god Saturn, the god of agricultural bounty. You might recognize many of these celebrations as things traditionally used during Christmas. These are the origins of many Christmas traditions. Christianity started to stamp out pagan beliefs, and were kind of taught that it was to help convert them to Christianity. This was considered a compromise by the missionaries who were traveling in these countries. They used parallels in their beliefs with these Nordic beliefs to try and bring people to their side, saying, hey, look, we're about the same. And the things that helped make this successful was moving the birth of Jesus Christ from spring to December 25th, as well as a Norwegian king who was raised Christian in England before coming back and taking power, and then he forcibly converted people by moving Yule traditions and winter solstice celebrations to December 25th to align with this birth of Christ, and the people were told they had to pick one or the other and celebrate it, or they would be subjected to substantial fines. And so then we start to see Christianity stamping out pagan beliefs across the world at that point. So let's return to the one tradition that of all of this that I actually wanted to focus on, which is the Yule log. In Provence, in France, it's traditional that the whole family helps to cut the log down, and that a little bit of it was burnt each night out of the 12th night. If any of the log is left after that, then it's kept safe in the house until the next Christmas to protect against lightning. In some parts of the Netherlands, this was also done, but the log had to be stored under the bed. In some Eastern European countries, the log was cut down on Christmas Eve and lit that evening. In Cornwall in the UK, the log is called the mock. The log is dried out and then the bark is taken off before it's brought into the house to be burnt. And also in the UK, barrel makers, also called coopers, were giving their customers old logs that they could use because they couldn't use them for making the barrels themselves. The custom of Yule logs spread all over Europe, and different kinds of woods are actually used in different countries. In England, oak is the most traditional. Scotland, it's birch. France, it's cherry. And France also has the tradition of sprinkling wine over your log before you burn it for a nice smell that it emits from it during that time. In Devon and Somerset in the UK, some people actually do very large bundles of ash twigs because it is believed that Joseph, Mary, and Jesus were very cold, and so they had to burn these twigs to keep warm. So that's why they keep that for Christmas night. So the shepherds get a bunch of twigs to help them. In some parts of Ireland, people have a large candle instead of a log, and it's only lit on New Year's Eve and on the 12th night. There are also chemicals that can be mixed in with your fire to burn different types of flame. So you've got potassium nitrate, which makes a violet color, barium nitrate makes apple green, borax, which makes a vivid green, copper sulfate, which makes a blue, and table salt that can make it bright yellow. So after all of that, how do we get from that to the sweet treat that we have nowadays and many eat during these winter months? Best I can tell, literally super simple, super duper simple. People started living in cities and towns, and you just couldn't go out and get a tree and burn it in your house anymore, not following the same rules, and it just was a burden to go do that with modernization of society. So it was just hard to accomplish it, and this practice needed to evolve with the change in society, and eventually in France, that's when a new way to celebrate was born. One of the first known Yule log recipes is potentially in 1895, which was published by a French pastry chef, Pierre Lecan, at Le Mémorial Historique et Géographique de la Pâtisserie, and people aren't actually sure if his is the first. So he was working for 2 years as a personal pastry chef for the Prince Charles III of Monaco. However, he had pulled recipes from other people and was really only there for 2 years, so people aren't sure he did it. They do have other ones that are potential people that invented this cake. One being Anton Charot from Paris. In 1879, he created the rolled sponge cake filled with buttercream. And while we're not sure he invented this, he is absolutely credited with inventing buttercream, it seems. There was a pastry apprentice working in Paris and City Hall in 1834, another chef from Lyon in the 1860s. There's a recipe for a pastry log coated with ganache, very similar, decorated with pink flowers and green leaves, and a recipe book of a 1903 chocolatier confectioner in the French Alps called Félix Bonnat, as well as there's a region that has a Christmas roll cake in the 19th century. So we're not nailing down exactly who really invented it, but it definitely does appear, especially during this 19th century. The cake itself is a sponge cake that takes a patient hand to complete. It needs to be rolled up into the classic swirl just to cool it empty. So we had to put like a towel on it, so just to keep it cool. Once it's cooled all the way through, you have to very carefully unroll it and spread your icing in the center and re-roll the cake to get that classic spiral on the inside. If you do this too fast, do it at the wrong time, the cake can crack and break, and so then you kind of lose your shape and it'll flatten out. The outer icing needs to be able to hold its shape in the ganache so that you can texture it to resemble the bark. Other decorations are also used, such as meringue mushrooms, holly sprigs, cherries, and more to make it look like it was lifted from the forest floor so many years ago. These cakes are a visual treat that ties us to years and years of ancient history. The rest is quite literally just the normal spread of pastry items as people and news travel throughout the world. You can find traditions of Yule log cakes and more in this modern day across many of the same nations that celebrated Yule and solstice before, and some still do in this modern day, and it is used exactly for that. Some families enjoyed the cake as well as videos of Yule logs burning that people are able to just broadcast in their homes while they go through their celebrations. And so there we have it. Yule log cakes come from the Yule celebration, also called Yule, from Vikings and other pagan areas that had many different traditions that were brought in to Christmas so that they could be converted to Christianity, and then this cake just came out of all of that since the Yule log stopped being burned in homes. Thank you for watching. I'm Soph, and this is Uncultured Palates, This Food and History. If you'd like to see more, please like and subscribe. Thank you.